So 10,500 Air Canada flight attendants just conducted the most heroic strike. They defied a back-to-work order from the Mark Carney government, and they defeated it. This is the same back-to-work order, Section 107 of the Labour Code, that Trudeau had used against 7 unions last year to break the right to strike. And the flight attendants of Air Canada have defeated this law. We cannot underline this enough, how significant this is, that this strike-breaking activity that has become so common from governments in Canada proved to be nothing but a piece of paper that Mark Hancock, the president, the national president of CUPE, ripped up and said, we are not going back to work. It proved to be nothing. And ultimately, that's something that Marxists have always explained. What is the law? What is order from the government? Is that power? Well, we argue real power is in the streets. Real power is in the balance of class forces. And in this strike, the balance was overwhelmingly on the side of the workers. All of the polls showed that the overwhelming majority of society, the overwhelming majority of the working class, supported the flight attendants. There was a poll in the Globe and Mail that had 94% in support of the flight attendants. Nobody, almost nobody, just the bourgeoisie and their lackeys supported Air Canada, the greedy bosses of Air Canada who can't afford to pay enough. So yeah, we congratulate the flight attendants of Air Canada, and we think this was a really watershed moment here. Now the stage is set. Every single time a government tries to use Section 107 or legislate the workers back to work and take away the right to strike, that must be defied. Usually union leaders say all these things, oh, we can't defy, there's fines, there might be jail time. What happened? Is Mark Hancock in jail? Did the union get fined? No, actually, nothing happened. What happened? Air Canada came back to the table. That's how you defeat this. Now, quite often you go, oh, we'll challenge the law in the courts. 10 years later, you might win a ruling. Meanwhile, it doesn't stop it in the future, and meanwhile, they continue to violate the right to strike. The right to strike can only be defended in practice, and that is the lesson of this strike. Now, that being said, it is not all positive. What was the strike about? So flight attendants, Air Canada flight attendants, especially entry-level flight attendants, are some of the lowest paid workers in the country. Entry-level flight attendants at Air Canada are paid well below the minimum wage. And there's actually unpaid work. The union did a fantastic job of making this the central point of the strike. They said, we will not stand for any more unpaid work. That flight attendants are only paid for a long time. They've only been paid for the time in the air. But they have to show up upwards of an hour, hour and a half before the flight. They have to spend time after deplaning. If the flight gets delayed, they got to hang out in the airport. Many flight attendants were living out of their car, had to have an extra job because they can't afford to make ends meet. And this was a central question in the struggle. This even forced the jobs minister to say, we were very concerned about these allegations. We were unaware of this. And this violates the labor code. And they're going to conduct an investigation into unpaid work. Under capitalism, isn't it, I get paid for my labor? I get paid an hourly rate? No, this is not the way it was this is not the way it currently still is for flight attendants. So this is a major question of the struggle. So wages and unpaid work. Now, what is the deal that we have before us? So in the wee hours of Tuesday, in the middle of the morning, the union sent a message to all the members, and they publicly posted about this as well, that the strike was over, and they provided no details. Now, as a revolutionary Marxist who's followed the trade union movement for a couple decades now, this was a little concerning. Everyone was celebrating. The union leaders were saying unpaid work is over, as if they've scored a massive victory. I was very skeptical of this, and as the details have come out, they had a Zoom meeting, and workers were able to attend it yesterday. All the details started to come out. Unpaid work is not over. They lied. The strike was called off without the ranks being able to vote on it, without any details on the contract. And now that the details come out, it's not. 50%. All that is in the contract is that the workers will get paid 50% of just the hour before they board. 50% of their wage. That goes up to 70% after you've been a flight attendant for over 4 years, which large sectors of the flight attendants have been there less than 4 years, so this will not apply to them. Interesting to note that 50% was on the table prior to the strike. That was already what Air Canada was offering. Actually, there's other airlines that have started to win this as well. So they saw which way the wind was blowing and they were willing to give that concession. But so why strike if you're going to get almost exactly the same thing as was on the table before? As well, wages. So the wage offer that was on the table prior to the strike was 17.2% over 4 years. That has been increased to 20.26% over 4 years, which is an extremely small increase. And actually the union said the reason why they rejected the 17.2% increase is because it would maintain wages of entry-level flight attendants well below the minimum wage. We crunched the numbers. This 20.26%, it will maintain wages well below the minimum wage. So why are the union leaders recommending a deal that will maintain the wages well below minimum wage for a large sector of their workers? Many workers expressed the fact that they wanted to vote against this deal. But then when they said if they wanted to vote against, the leader said, well, we're not going to go back on strike. So we defended the right to vote on the contract, but you have to vote yes. Is this democracy? Is this a genuine democratic tradition in the trade union movement? Well, I would say no. And I would say that this only leads to worsening living conditions. This leads to wage erosion. Why? Because the members actually don't have a real say in what's happening. Now, what should have happened? So, Air Canada called the union and wanted to go back to the table. That in and of itself was good. It actually was fine. It proved that they had won. They had beaten back the back-to-work order, and the company was coming back to the table. And they came back and they increased their offer by a little bit. So go back to the ranks, say, this is what they're proposing. We do not think it's sufficient to end the strike, or we think it's sufficient to end the strike, and put it to a vote, not unilaterally ending the strike without a discussion or a vote. This is really the only way. Open bargaining, transparent bargaining, put the decision on the outcome, on the future of the strike in the hands of the rank and file workers. And this is what the communists at the Revolutionary Communist Party stand for. We stand for a return to the genuine democratic revolutionary traditions of the Canadian labor movement. And we believe that we are just at the beginning of a revival of the trade union movement. You have a mass anger welling up from below, and it's actually clashing against the old guard of the trade union movement. It's pushing them into action, and it's finding that they're lacking in many ways. And this is going to create new leaders. It's going to push a lot of leaders far to the left into militant action, and it will transform the trade union movement from top to bottom. And communists have a fundamental role to play in that. We hope to help broad layers of militant workers learn the lessons from this so that we can revive the genuine democratic revolutionary traditions of the trade unions in Canada so the workers can fight and be in control of the struggle and fight and win once and for all.